Close your eyes and imagine the silent, absolute darkness between the stars. A void so profound, so vast, that light itself seems to grow weary on its journey across it. Now, imagine something emerging from that darkness. Not a spacecraft, not a probe dispatched by curious minds like our own, but something far older. Something that has been journeying for eons, carrying the secrets of a stellar system that burned to embers long before our own sun was even born. On July 1, 2025, astronomers at the Atlas Telescope facility in Chile detected a faint, unassuming speck of light moving against the stellar backdrop. Within hours, the news sent ripples of excitement and urgency through the global astronomical community. The third confirmed interstellar object to enter our solar system had arrived. They officially named it 3I/Atlas. Yet, for millions around the globe, this visitor is known by another name, one whispered in conspiracy circles, debated in late-night forums, and etched into ancient tablets thousands of years old. Some believe this is not merely a comet from a distant star. They believe this is the return, the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, the homecoming of the Anunnaki. Before we delve deeper, ignite that like button and prepare for the revelations to come. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is there. And as always with our videos, the visuals are here to add context, but they aren't necessary to follow along. Thank you for always having our back. Prepare yourself and let's dive in. The discovery unfolded in the early hours of July 1, 2025. The Atlas Telescope System, a vital part of a network designed to detect potentially hazardous asteroids approaching Earth, was conducting its routine scan of the southern sky. ATLAS, which stands for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, is a NASA-funded project with stations across the globe, all working in concert to provide humanity with advanced warning of cosmic threats. The telescope in Rio Hato, Chile, captured a series of images that revealed a faint object moving at an extraordinary speed. At first, the observations seemed routine. Space, after all, is filled with objects in motion. Asteroids tumbling through the inner solar system, comets awakening as they approach the sun's warmth, and distant planets making their ancient rounds. But something about this object was profoundly different. The computer systems flagged it immediately. Its trajectory was all wrong. Its velocity was simply impossible. Within the first 24 hours, astronomers frantically gathered observations from telescope archives around the world. The Zwicky Transient Facility in California had unknowingly captured images of the object as early as June 14th. Other Atlas telescopes had photographed it on June 25th. No one had noticed it initially because it had been passing directly in front of the dense starfields of the galactic center, the bright, crowded heart of the Milky Way, where a single faint wanderer could easily be lost among millions of distant suns. But now, with its trajectory calculated, the truth became undeniable. This object was moving at over 200,000 kilometers per hour. It was on a hyperbolic orbit, a path confirming it would pass through our solar system only once, then vanish back into the interstellar void, never to return. The eccentricity of its orbit was measured at a staggering 6. To grasp the true magnitude of this number, one must first understand a little about orbital mechanics. An orbit with an eccentricity of 0 is a perfect circle. An eccentricity between 0 and 1 describes an ellipse, the shape of every planet's path around our sun. An eccentricity of exactly 1 describes a parabola, the trajectory of an object just barely reaching escape velocity. But an eccentricity greater than 1 means the object is moving so fast that no star's gravity can hold it. It will escape. And 3I/Atlas, with its astonishing eccentricity of 6.14, was moving faster than any natural object ever documented within our solar system. Even Oumuamua, the mysterious first interstellar visitor discovered in 2017, had an eccentricity of only 1. The second, Comet 2I/Borisov, discovered in 2019, reached only 3. This new visitor was shattering every record. It was screaming through our solar system at a velocity that defied comprehension. The Minor Planet Center, the official body responsible for designating solar system objects, gave it the interstellar classification 3I, the third interstellar object confirmed by humanity. It was also given the comet designation C/2025N1, though that bureaucratic label could never capture what this object truly represented. A visitor from the endless dark, a messenger from another world. Within days of the announcement, follow-up observations began pouring in from observatories across the globe. The Lowell Discovery Telescope in Arizona, the Canada-France-Hawaii Telescope atop Mauna Kea, the Nordic Optical Telescope, and the massive Gran Telescopio Canarias in Spain all turned their powerful lenses toward the newcomer. Each observation added crucial data points, refining the orbit, measuring the brightness, and analyzing the spectrum of light reflected from this cosmic wanderer. The early observations were puzzling. Initially, Astronomers could not determine if they were looking at an asteroid or a comet. Several observers, including the renowned astronomer Alan Hale, co-discoverer of the famous Hale-Bopp comet, reported seeing no cometary features. There was no coma, the fuzzy cloud of gas and dust that surrounds an active comet, and no tail streaming away from the sun. To all appearances, it was a dark, inert rock, a cosmic derelict tumbling silently through space. But on July 2nd, everything changed. Observations from 3 different facilities on that single day revealed that 3I/Atlas was not dead. It was waking up. A faint coma began to bloom around the object. A subtle halo formed from sublimating ice, turning directly from a solid state to gas. A slight elongation was detected, the nascent beginning of a tail as the comet released material into the void. David Jewett and Jane Liu, 2 of the world's leading comet researchers, observed the object with the Nordic Optical Telescope and confirmed it was clearly active, with a diffuse appearance that could mean only one thing. This was not an asteroid. This was a comet. And it was alive. As 3I/Atlas drew closer to the sun, its transformation accelerated. The ice hidden deep beneath its surface, ice that had been frozen for billions of years in the crushing cold between the stars, began to heat. The solid material sublimated, skipping the liquid phase entirely and turning into gas that erupted from the surface in powerful jets and fountains. By late July, NASA's Hubble Space Telescope captured stunning images of the visitor. The pictures showed a teardrop-shaped cocoon of dust, a glowing shroud surrounding the solid nucleus hidden within. Because Hubble was tracking the fast-moving comet, the background stars appeared as streaks in the exposure, as if the entire universe were rushing past while the comet hung motionless at the center of the frame. The nucleus itself, the solid heart of the comet, remained obscured beneath its veil of dust and gas. However, Hubble's observations allowed astronomers to estimate its size. The upper limit was calculated at 3.5 miles or 5.6 kilometers in diameter. Could be as small as 440 meters across, roughly the size of 4 football fields placed end to end. But its true size remained uncertain, a mystery hidden beneath its luminous cloak. The coma surrounding the nucleus, however, had grown to staggering dimensions. High-resolution images from the massive 10-meter Grand Telescopio Canarius measured the cloud at 26,400 by 24,700 kilometers. That's nearly twice the diameter of planet Earth. And this was not the comet itself, but merely the atmosphere it had created. The breath of ancient ice turned to vapor in the warmth of our sun. Scientists quickly realized that 3I/Atlas was chemically distinct from typical solar system comets. Spectroscopic observations revealed something unexpected. As the comet approached the sun, it showed much higher levels of carbon dioxide than water vapor. Most comets display the opposite pattern, releasing water ice as their primary volatile material once they cross a certain threshold of solar heating. But 3I/Atlas was different. It was outgassing carbon dioxide long before water became the dominant component. This suggested its surface composition was unusual, perhaps formed under different conditions than the icy bodies in our own solar system. The comet's color provided additional clues. Observations revealed a distinct, reddish hue, similar to what astronomers classify as D-type asteroids and certain objects in the outer solar system. This red coloration is believed to be caused by complex organic molecules known as tholins, cosmic tars that form when simpler compounds are bombarded by radiation over immense timescales. The presence of tholins suggested that 3I/Atlas had spent an incredible amount of time in interstellar space, its surface slowly transformed by the relentless radiation that permeates the galaxy. The comet's activity level also puzzled researchers. Dr. Qiqing Zhang at Lowell Observatory noted that its cometary activity seemed delayed compared to typical comets. Most comets begin releasing water vapor rapidly once they reach a certain distance from the sun, causing them to brighten quickly. But 3I/Atlas approached much closer to the sun than usual before the outgassing process began in earnest. The object seemed reluctant to wake up, as if it were fundamentally different from the comets born in our own stellar neighborhood. Pre-discovery observations from NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, TESS, revealed something even more remarkable. The satellite had captured images of 3I/Atlas as early as May 7, 2025, a full 2 months before its official discovery. At that time, the comet was roughly 6.4 astronomical units from the sun, farther than Jupiter. And yet, even at that enormous distance, 3I/Atlas was already showing signs of activity. It had already begun to awaken in the frigid darkness far beyond the orbit of Mars, a feat that should have been impossible for a comet composed primarily of water ice. This early activity strongly suggested that the comet's composition included highly volatile materials, substances that could sublimate even in the frigid outer reaches of the solar system. Carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, perhaps even frozen nitrogen or methane. These are the ices of the outer darkness, the substances that only exist in the coldest regions of space. Their presence on 3I/Atlas hinted at a formation environment vastly different from our own. Perhaps this visitor came from a stellar system where planets formed farther from their star. Or perhaps its parent system was simply colder, orbiting a dimmer red dwarf star instead of a sun like ours. Whatever its origin, 3I/Atlas carried the chemical fingerprint of an alien world. The trajectory of 3I/Atlas told a story that spanned billions of years and countless light years of space. Astronomers traced its path backward through time, calculating its origin point before it encountered our sun. The comet's approach vector was itself an anomaly. It did not arrive from the direction most astronomers would have predicted. Previous theories suggested that interstellar objects should primarily arrive from the solar apex, the direction our sun is moving relative to nearby stars. If you imagine our solar system as a car driving through space, the solar apex is the windshield. And just as rain appears to come straight at your windshield when you drive through a storm, interstellar objects should preferentially approach from that direction. But 3I/Atlas defied this expectation. It arrived from the southern celestial hemisphere, from a direction opposite the solar apex. It came at us from behind, so to speak, approaching from the general direction of the constellation Sagittarius, where the galactic core burns with the light of billions of ancient stars. This southern origin was completely unexpected and raised profound questions. Was 3I/Atlas simply a rare discovery, a statistical anomaly that happened to approach from an unusual direction? Or were interstellar objects from the southern hemisphere more common than astronomers had previously believed? The velocity data provided additional clues about the comet's deep history. By breaking down its motion relative to the galactic coordinate system, astronomers determined that when 3I/Atlas arrived, it was moving away from the galactic center with a radial velocity of 51 kilometers per second. It was also moving upward through the galactic plane, rising above the thin disk of stars where most of the galaxy's stellar population resides. This motion suggested something remarkable. By tracing its trajectory backward through the gravitational field of the Milky Way, researchers Shmuel Bialy and Professor Abraham Loeb determined that 3I/Atlas likely originated from the thick disk of our galaxy. This component of the Milky Way is populated by older stars, objects that formed when our galaxy was younger and the universe itself contained fewer heavy elements. The median age they calculated for 3I/Atlas was an astounding 4.6 billion years. This made it the oldest of the three known interstellar visitors, older than 2I/Borisov, which likely formed around 1.7 billion years ago. This visitor was a true ancient, older even than the Earth itself. 3I/Atlas had been wandering the galaxy since before our planet existed, tumbling through the endless dark, a silent witness to the slow, grand evolution of the cosmos. For over 4 billion years it had drifted, and now, by pure chance, its path had intersected with ours. It would pass through our inner solar system, swing around our sun, and then continue its journey back into the void, never to return. A brief encounter that would last only months. A fleeting cosmic handshake between our fledgling world and a visitor older than stone. The path of 3I/Atlas through our solar system was meticulously calculated and monitored. When first detected on July 1st, the comet was approximately 4.2 Australian dollars from the Sun, roughly 627 million kilometers, placing it within the orbit of Jupiter. But it was racing inward at tremendous speed, pulled by our Sun's gravity into an ever-tightening curve. On October 30th, 2025, 3I/Atlas reached perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun. At that moment it was 1.35 astronomical units from our star, roughly 203 million kilometers or 126 million miles away. For perspective, this placed it just inside the orbit of Mars, in the vast gap between the red planet and Earth. At perihelion, the comet's velocity peaked at an incredible 246,000 kilometers per hour as the Sun's gravity slingshot it to maximum speed. This passage through perihelion represented the most perilous moment of the comet's entire journey. The intense solar radiation and heat could have triggered an outburst, a sudden, explosive release of gas and dust that would cause the comet to brighten dramatically. Astronomers have observed this behavior in many comets. Sometimes, the nucleus can catastrophically disintegrate, shattering into dozens of pieces that continue their ghostly procession across the sky. This happened to Comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 in 1994, which broke into multiple fragments before crashing spectacularly into Jupiter. More recently, Comet Atlas, a different object discovered in 2020, disintegrated completely as it approached the Sun. Similarly, Comet Ison broke apart in 2013, evaporating entirely at perihelion and teaching scientists valuable lessons about the fragility of these ancient ice worlds. The fragmentation process itself is poorly understood. Some comets survive dozens of passages around the sun, while others shatter on their first approach. The structural integrity seems to depend on how the ice and rock were originally assembled, whether the nucleus is a single, coherent body or a loosely bound rubble pile held together by weak gravity and ice acting as cement. When the sun's heat vaporizes the ice, internal pressure can build until the structure fails. Asymmetrical jets of gas can erupt, creating torques that spin the nucleus faster and faster until centrifugal forces tear it apart. For 3I/Atlas, astronomers around the world watched with bated breath as it approached perihelion, knowing that at any moment the comet could fragment. Every observation was precious, as each one might be the last. But as of the most recent observations, 3I/Atlas had remained stable. Its brightness and activity level appeared steady. The nucleus seemed structurally sound, able to withstand the intense thermal and gravitational stresses of its solar encounter. This suggested the object had survived its formation and billions of years of interstellar travel without accumulating fatal damage. As the comet passed behind the sun from Earth's perspective in late October, ground-based observations became temporarily impossible. For several weeks, 3I/Atlas vanished from our telescopes, hidden behind our star like a performer stepping behind a curtain. This solar conjunction is a frustrating but inevitable part of observing comets. But spacecraft stationed throughout the solar system provided invaluable data during this blind spot. Unlike ground-based telescopes, these probes could view the sun and nearby objects from multiple angles. On October 3rd, 3I/Atlas made its closest approach to Mars, passing the red planet at a distance of only 19 million miles. This presented a unique opportunity. NASA and the European Space Agency had multiple spacecraft in orbit around Mars, and 3 of them successfully observed the interstellar visitor. The resulting images represent the closest, most detailed views humanity has ever obtained of an interstellar object. The European Space Agency's Mars Express Orbiter, NASA's MAVEN spacecraft, and the ESA's ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter all turned their instruments toward the passing comet. The Cassis camera on ExoMars, designed to image the Martian surface, was reprogrammed to aim at the sky, capturing 3I/Atlas as it swept past against a backdrop of distant stars. The data from these Mars observations allowed scientists to improve the predicted trajectory of the comet by a factor of 10, dramatically reducing the uncertainty in its position. In a way, this was an unplanned but invaluable planetary defense rehearsal. If a dangerous object were ever detected on a collision course with Earth, the ability to triangulate its position using observations from multiple locations would be crucial for determining the threat. 3I/Atlas provided the perfect test case. Following its passage by Mars, 3I/Atlas continued its outbound journey. On December 19, 2025, it will make its closest approach to Earth. Though close is a relative term, at its nearest point the comet will still be 1.8 astronomical units away, roughly 270 million kilometers. That's nearly twice the distance between the Earth and the Sun. It was never a threat. It will never be a threat. Its trajectory is carrying it away, back toward the outer darkness. By March of 2026, it will pass near Jupiter's orbit one final time before crossing the heliopause, the boundary where our sun's influence fades and true interstellar space begins. And then it will be gone forever. NASA launched an unprecedented observation campaign to study this rare visitor. 12 different NASA spacecraft and space telescopes captured data as 3I/Atlas passed through. The James Webb Space Telescope, the most powerful observatory ever built, trained its infrared eyes on the comet, searching for the chemical signatures of specific molecules in its coma. The goal was to read the comet like a book and learn what its parent stellar system was like. The Hubble Space Telescope continued its observations, tracking how the coma evolved. Farther out, the Lucy spacecraft, on its mission to explore Jupiter's Trojan asteroids, captured long-exposure images of 3I/Atlas when the comet was 240 million miles away. The LORRI imager on Lucy showed the comet's coma and tail as faint smudges against the black, a ghostly visitor photographed from the deep frontier of our solar system. Perhaps the most remarkable observations came from the Stereo A spacecraft. Using its heliospheric imager, Stereo A captured a series of stacked images showing 3I/Atlas as a bright, fuzzy orb moving against the background stars. The ESA's JUICE mission, on its way to explore Jupiter's icy moons, also turned its instruments toward the visitor just after perihelion, when the object was at its most active. Even the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, managed to capture faint images as the comet passed through its field of view. By observing the comet from so many different vantage points, NASA and its international partners created a three-dimensional picture of 3I/Atlas. Each spacecraft provided a unique viewing angle, and by combining the data, astronomers could study how the coma changed shape, how the tail evolved, and how jets of material erupted from the hidden nucleus. This was, by far, the most comprehensive study of an interstellar object ever conducted. And yet, what the data revealed was remarkable. Despite its exotic origins, 3I/Atlas behaved, in many respects, much like the comets native to our own solar system. It obeyed the same fundamental laws of physics, reacting to the sun's warmth in predictable, familiar patterns. Still, subtle, telltale differences remained. The peculiar delay in the outgassing of water vapor. The surprising dominance of carbon dioxide in its chemical signature. A distinct reddish hue, the telltale sign of eons spent adrift in the harsh radiation of interstellar space. These were the unmistakable fingerprints of its alien heritage, irrefutable proof that this visitor hailed from somewhere else entirely, a place with different conditions, a different chemistry, a different history. This was a fragment of another world, delivered to our doorstep by the slow, silent currents of the galaxy. It was a message in a bottle, a cosmic artifact that had been journeying through the void for perhaps 4 billion years. The scientific community was unanimous in its assessment. 3I/Atlas is real. It is an interstellar object, and it poses absolutely no threat to Earth. NASA, the European Space Agency, and astronomical organizations around the globe issued clear, coordinated statements to reassure the public. The comet's trajectory had been calculated with extraordinary precision. It would not impact our planet. It would not trigger earthquakes, floods, or any of the other catastrophic scenarios that inevitably bubble up from the depths of the internet whenever an object approaches from the cosmos. The laws of physics are clear, and they are not open to negotiation. But for millions of people around the world, the arrival of 3I/Atlas signified something else entirely. For them, this was no mere comet. This was not some random chunk of ice and rock that had blundered into our solar system by cosmic chance. For them, this was the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. This was the return of the gods. This was Nibiru. And to understand why they believe this, we must journey backward through time. Not just decades or centuries, but millennia, to the dusty clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia and to the revolutionary theories of a man who claimed to have unlocked humanity's greatest secret. In 1976, a Russian-born American author named Zecharia Sitchin published a book that would forever alter the landscape of fringe archaeology. Titled The 12th Planet, its central thesis was as audacious as it was controversial. Sitchin claimed that ancient Sumerian texts, inscribed in cuneiform script on clay tablets over 4,000 years ago, were not myths or religious allegories. He insisted they were historical documents, literal accounts of extraterrestrial contact. According to Sitchin's interpretation, the Sumerians described a solar system containing 12 members, the Sun, the Moon, and 10 planets. But we only know of 9 planets, and since Pluto was still considered a planet in 1976, that left one unaccounted for. Sitchin called this missing world Nibiru, a name he borrowed from Babylonian astronomy. He asserted that Nibiru was a massive planet, perhaps 4 times the size of Earth, locked in a vast elliptical orbit that took 3,600 years to complete. For most of this epic journey, Nibiru would be far beyond Pluto, lost in the cold darkness of the outer solar system, invisible and forgotten. But every 3,600 years, its orbit would swing it back through the inner solar system, passing between Mars and Jupiter, close enough to be visible from Earth, close enough to exert a powerful gravitational influence on the other planets. And it was inhabited. According to Sitchin, Nibiru was home to an advanced humanoid species called the Anunnaki, a word he uniquely translated as those who from heaven to earth came. These beings were not gods in a spiritual sense. They were flesh and blood extraterrestrials, wielding technology so advanced it appeared magical to primitive humans. And roughly 450,000 years ago, they came to Earth. Their mission, Sitchin argued, was brutally simple. They needed gold. He claimed that Nibiru's atmosphere was failing, eroding into space, and the only way to save their world was to suspend fine particles of gold in their upper atmosphere, creating a reflective shield to retain heat and deflect harmful radiation. They established extensive mining operations on Earth, primarily in southeastern Africa. For thousands of years, the rank-and-file Anunnaki workers toiled in the mines, extracting the precious metal and shipping it back to their home world. But eventually the workers rebelled. The labor was too grueling, the conditions too harsh. Facing a crisis, the Anunnaki leadership needed a new solution. That solution was humanity. Drawing from his interpretation of the Atrahasis epic and other Mesopotamian creation myths, Sitchin claimed that the Anunnaki chief scientist, a being named Enki, proposed the creation of a hybrid species. He would take the primitive hominids already evolving on Earth, creatures like Homo erectus, and genetically engineer them, infusing their DNA with Anunnaki genetic material to fashion a more intelligent, more capable worker. The result was Homo sapiens. We were designed, Sitchin posited, to be slaves, created to toil in the mines for our alien masters. The biblical story of Adam and Eve, he argued, was nothing more than a distorted, fragmented memory of this genetic engineering event, passed down through generations until it hardened into religious mythology. Sitchin's sweeping narrative provided explanations for dozens of ancient mysteries. Why did civilization appear to erupt so suddenly in Sumer? Because the Anunnaki taught humans agriculture, writing, and mathematics. Why do ancient texts describe gods with all too human emotions and conflicts? Because they weren't gods at all, but advanced beings with their own intricate politics and power struggles. Why are there stories of a great flood in nearly every ancient culture? Because the last passage of Nibiru, around 11,000 BC, caused massive gravitational disruptions that triggered the catastrophic melting of the Antarctic ice sheets, resulting in the biblical deluge. The mainstream academic response to Sitchin's work was swift and unequivocal. Scholars of ancient languages, particularly experts in Sumerian and Akkadian, tore his translations apart. They argued that he had profoundly misread the texts, mistranslated keywords, and forcibly imposed a modern, technological framework onto ancient spiritual and mythological literature. The word Anunnaki, according to the overwhelming scholarly consensus among Assyriologists and Sumerologists, simply means princely offspring or children of Anu, referring to the principal deities in the Sumerian pantheon. The cuneiform evidence consistently supports this interpretation across hundreds of tablets. Sitchin's translation of the term as those who from heaven to earth came required reading meanings into the individual components that don't align with how those words function in any other context throughout Mesopotamian literature. The cylinder seals that Sitchin interpreted as depicting our solar system have been meticulously examined by specialists in Mesopotamian art and iconography. They identify them as standard presentation scenes, showing worshippers before deities, with the celestial symbols representing common astronomical and religious motifs, not planetary diagrams. The seal Sitchin designated VA 243, for instance, shows what experts recognize as a six-pointed star, a common symbol in ancient Near Eastern art that appears in numerous contexts having nothing to do with planetary systems. The number 3600 held mathematical significance in Sumerian base 60 mathematics, where it was called a shar. Mainstream scholars interpret this as a large numerical unit, much as we might use the word myriad to mean 10,000. Sitchin, however, insisted the shar was a literal measurement of orbital time, a reading unsupported by the context in which the term appears throughout cuneiform literature. But despite near-universal academic rejection, Sitchin's books sold millions of copies. His theories were compelling, dramatic, and they offered simple answers to the most profound questions about human origins. They tapped into a deep cultural desire to believe that we are not alone, that our history is more extraordinary than we've been taught, and that somewhere out there, our creators are watching. And now, in 2025, the true believers have a new, spectacular piece of evidence. The arrival of 3I/Atlas. The conspiracy theories began to circulate within hours of the discovery announcement. Online forums dedicated to ancient astronaut theories, UFO sightings, and alternative history exploded with speculation. Websites like Godlike Productions, Above Top Secret, and countless YouTube channels devoted to ancient mysteries immediately seized upon the news. Within 24 hours, dozens of videos had been uploaded with sensational titles like Return of the Anunnaki Confirmed, Nibiru Finally Arrives, and The Government Cannot Hide This Any Longer. These videos accumulated millions of views within days, shared frantically across social media platforms by believers eager to spread the word. The comment sections became self-reinforcing echo chambers where any hint of skepticism was immediately attacked as disinformation spread by government shills. Anyone questioning the Anunnaki interpretation was accused of being a paid NASA troll, part of the vast conspiracy to keep humanity ignorant. The timing was too perfect, they argued. The direction of approach too convenient. The name itself, Atlas, felt like a cosmic joke, a reference to the Titan who held up the heavens in Greek mythology. Some theorists went further, claiming Atlas was an acronym for Ancient Transmission Linked to Anunnaki Starship, or Alien Transport Lander Arriving to Solar System. These backronyms went viral through the conspiracy community despite having no basis in reality. The actual Atlas acronym stood for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, a perfectly mundane designation for the telescopic survey network that had been in use since its establishment. But in the world of conspiracy thinking, every coincidence is evidence, every name contains hidden meaning, and every official explanation is a lie covering up a deeper truth. More importantly, the believers pointed to the object's characteristics, claiming they matched ancient prophecies with eerie precision. They pulled out old translations of Sumerian and Babylonian texts, highlighting every reference to celestial bodies crossing the sky, to gods descending from heaven, to catastrophic floods and world-ending fire. They created elaborate charts showing supposed correlations between ancient calendars and modern astronomical calculations. They pointed to Mayan long count dates, Hindu yuga cycles, and Christian revelation prophecies, claiming all of them predicted this exact moment. The fact that these various prophetic systems contradicted each other and proposed completely different timelines was conveniently ignored. When faced with inconsistencies, conspiracy theorists simply layered on more complexity, arguing that different ancient cultures had access to different pieces of the puzzle, and only by combining all of them could the full truth emerge. First, there was the matter of its trajectory. 3I/Atlas approached from the direction of Sagittarius, from the region of the galactic center. In Sitchin's cosmology, Nibiru's orbit was described as highly inclined relative to the plane of the ecliptic, approaching from an angle that would make it difficult to detect until it was relatively close. The southern approach of 3I/Atlas seemed to fit this description perfectly. Second, there was the eccentricity of its orbit. While the measured eccentricity of 6.14 clearly indicated a hyperbolic trajectory, meaning the object would leave the solar system and never return, conspiracy theorists argued that gravitational interactions during its passage could potentially alter this. In theory, an extremely close encounter with Jupiter or Saturn might slow an object enough to capture it, though such an event would require extraordinarily specific circumstances and would likely result in a highly elongated, unstable orbit, not the regular clockwork path Nibiru supposedly follows. Most captured moons of the outer planets are thought to have been acquired billions of years ago under vastly different dynamical conditions. Third, there was the object's activity pattern. The fact that observations suggested it began outgassing unusually far from the sun, at distances where typical water ice remains frozen, pointed toward a composition rich in highly volatile materials like carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide. These substances can sublimate at much colder temperatures than water. Conspiracy theorists, however, seized on this as evidence of artificial heating from internal power sources keeping the object warm. This interpretation completely ignored the well-documented phenomenon of comets rich in supervolatile ices becoming active at great distances, a natural process observed in many long-period comets from our own Oort cloud. Fourth, there was its size. Hubble observations indicated the nucleus could be anywhere from roughly half a kilometer to 5.6 kilometers in diameter, a wide range reflecting the difficulty of distinguishing the solid nucleus from its vast, obscuring coma of gas and dust. Conspiracy theorists focused exclusively on the upper end of this estimate, claiming it was suspiciously large and perfectly sized for a generation ship. In reality, many known comets fall within or exceed this size range, including the famed comet Hale-Bopp, which had a nucleus estimated to be a colossal 60 kilometers across. Fifth, and perhaps most compelling to believers, was electromagnetic speculation. Some theorists claimed that anomalous radio emissions had been detected coming from the direction of 3I/Atlas, emissions that supposedly showed patterns inconsistent with any natural process. These claims circulated online without a shred of verifiable evidence or credible sources, yet they spread like wildfire through social media, creating a powerful echo chamber of confirmation bias where unsubstantiated assertions were treated as established fact. Sixth, there was the ancient tablet evidence. Believers pointed to the fact that ancient Mesopotamian texts described Nibiru as approaching from the direction of the south, from the region of the underworld, the realm below the ecliptic plane. The Babylonian term Nibiru itself meant crossing point or place of transition, which could easily be interpreted as an object crossing the plane of the solar system at a sharp angle. The match seemed too perfect to be a coincidence. The believers constructed an elaborate narrative to explain what was really happening. They argued that 3I/Atlas was not a comet at all, but a massive spacecraft, either the planet Nibiru itself or a vessel sent ahead as a scout, a herald announcing the return of the Anunnaki. They claimed that world governments had known about this object long before its public discovery. The pre-discovery observations from May, they argued, were proof of a cover-up. NASA and other space agencies had been tracking 3I/Atlas for months, perhaps even years, but had only announced its existence once it became impossible to hide from amateur astronomers. The true orbital parameters were being kept secret, they insisted. The real size of the object was much larger than publicly stated. And most importantly, the object was not following a natural trajectory. It was under intelligent control. They pointed to the fact that the object's perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, placed it precisely in the gap between the orbits of Earth and Mars. This was not random, they argued. This was a deliberate parking orbit, a stable position where the craft could remain while its occupants observed the inner planets and prepared for the next phase of their mission. They claimed that electromagnetic communications were being exchanged between 3I/Atlas and secret facilities on Earth, that the Anunnaki were already in contact with world leaders, negotiating the terms of their return. Some theories suggested the Anunnaki were benevolent, returning to uplift humanity, to share advanced technology, and to guide us toward a new golden age. Other theories were far darker. They claimed the Anunnaki were coming back to reclaim their property. Humanity was their creation, their genetically engineered slave race, and now, after millennia of absence, they were returning to reassert control. The gold mining operations would begin again, the genetic experiments would resume, and those who resisted would be eliminated. The most extreme versions of the conspiracy claimed that the approach of 3I/Atlas was triggering ancient defense systems buried beneath the Earth's surface. The Great Pyramids were not tombs. They were power generators designed to create an electromagnetic shield to protect humanity from the Anunnaki's return. Secret government cabals were frantically trying to reactivate these systems, working with esoteric knowledge preserved by secret societies for thousands of years. Others claimed that the Anunnaki had never truly left Earth. They had been here all along, living in hidden underground bases or orbiting in cloaked spacecraft, manipulating human history from the shadows. The arrival of 3I/Atlas was not a return, but a reinforcement. More Anunnaki were coming to join those already here, and together they would implement the final phase of their ancient plan. The scientific community responded to these conspiracy theories with a mixture of frustration and weary resignation. Astronomers, planetary scientists, and specialists in orbital mechanics issued statements, wrote blog posts, and gave interviews patiently explaining why 3I/Atlas could not possibly be Nibiru. First, the orbital period was fundamentally incompatible. Sitchin proposed that Nibiru followed a 3,600-year orbit, returning to the inner solar system at regular intervals. But 3I/Atlas exhibited an eccentricity of 6.14, indicating it was not gravitationally bound to our sun. The mathematics of orbital mechanics are unambiguous. An object with an eccentricity greater than 1 is on a hyperbolic escape trajectory. It will pass through our solar system once and never return. For 3I/Atlas to be Nibiru, every careful observation and calculation by astronomers worldwide would have to be systematically and completely wrong. Second, the object's behavior was entirely consistent with that of a natural comet. The outgassing, the formation of a coma and tail, the brightening as it approached the sun, the spectroscopic signatures showing water, carbon dioxide, and organic molecules. All of this matched exactly what astronomers expected to see from a comet originating in another stellar system. There was no evidence of artificial heating, no patterned radio emissions, no course corrections, nothing whatsoever that suggested intelligence or technology. Third, the size of the object was far too small to be a planet. Even the most generous upper estimate of 5.6 kilometers in diameter was minuscule compared to Earth's 12,700 kilometer diameter. Nibiru was supposed to be a giant planet, several times Earth's size. 3I/Atlas was barely larger than a mountain. The mass difference was on the order of billions of times. The idea that this tiny object was the prophesied destroyer of worlds was, on its face, absurd. Fourth, the gravitational effects were non-existent. If a massive planet were approaching the inner solar system, its gravity would perturb the orbits of the other planets in ways that would be immediately and undeniably obvious. This is not speculation. It is established physics confirmed countless times. The discovery of Neptune itself in 1846 was accomplished through precisely this method. Astronomers noticed that Uranus was not following its predicted orbit. Something was pulling on it gravitationally. By analyzing the deviations, French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier calculated where an unknown planet must be located to cause the observed perturbations. When astronomers pointed their telescopes at that exact location, there was Neptune. This triumph of theoretical astronomy proved that gravity is an exquisitely precise force that cannot be hidden or faked. In the modern era, we track the positions of planets with extraordinary accuracy. Ground-based telescopes, spacecraft like Voyager and New Horizons, and radar ranging from facilities like Arecibo and Goldstone provide a continuous stream of data on planetary positions. If a Mars-sized or larger object were approaching, its gravitational influence would perturb the orbits of Mars, Earth, and Venus long before the object ever became visible. We would see the planets deviating from their expected positions by measurable amounts. The asteroids in the main belt would show disturbed orbits. The trajectories of spacecraft orbiting Mars would require constant correction. None of this was happening. The planets continued their ancient, silent dance with perfect predictability, undisturbed. Every single piece of data confirmed that nothing more massive than a small comet was present. The conspiracy theorists, of course, had an answer for this. They claimed the Anunnaki possessed gravity-shielding technology, an advanced physics that allowed them to mask their gravitational signature. This explanation, however, contradicts our fundamental understanding of general relativity, which describes gravity not as a force, but as the curvature of spacetime itself, caused by mass and energy. To shield or hide gravity would require either eliminating mass entirely or invoking physics that violates every confirmed observation ever made about how the universe works. Fifth, the object would have been visible to amateur astronomers for months if it were truly the size claimed. A planet-sized object at the distance 3I/Atlas past Earth would have been brighter than Mars, easily visible to the naked eye. it would have been photographed by thousands of amateur astronomers around the world. It simply could not have been hidden. The conspiracy required a level of global coordination and control that was impossible in an age of widespread amateur astronomy and instant internet communication. Sixth, and perhaps most damningly, the actual science of planetary formation makes the existence of a planet like Nibiru deeply implausible. An orbit with an eccentricity high enough to take a planet from the outer solar system to the inner system every 3,600 years would be gravitationally unstable. Over millions of years, repeated interactions with the giant planets would either eject such an object from the solar system entirely or cause it to crash into the sun or another planet. A planet on such a chaotic orbit could not have survived for the 4-5 billion year history of the solar system. It would have been eliminated long ago. But despite the overwhelming scientific consensus, the conspiracy theories persisted. They mutated and evolved, adapting to each new piece of data. When NASA announced that 3I/Atlas would make its closest approach to Earth in December at a safe distance of 1.8 astronomical units, theorists claimed this was disinformation and that the real close approach would be much nearer. When the comet passed behind the Sun in late October and temporarily became unobservable, they claimed this was when the real action would happen, when the Anunnaki would make contact under the cover of the solar blind spot. When no catastrophe occurred at perihelion, the believers simply moved the goalposts. The Anunnaki were not returning to destroy Earth, they argued, but to save it. Or the arrival was only the first phase of a multi-year plan. Or 3I/Atlas was not Nibiru itself, but merely a scout ship, and the real Nibiru was still years away, hidden behind the sun, slowly and silently approaching. The psychological appeal of these theories was powerful. They offered a grand narrative, a story where everything was connected, where random cosmic events had deep meaning and purpose. They provided a sense of secret knowledge, the feeling of being one of the awakened few who could see through the lies of the establishment. They tapped into our most ancient fears and hopes, the terror of Judgment Day and the promise of divine intervention. And perhaps most importantly, in a chaotic and uncertain world, they offered an explanation. If the Anunnaki were real, if their return was imminent, if the ancient prophecies were truly being fulfilled, then the bewildering state of modern human civilization suddenly snapped into a chilling cosmic logic. The endless wars, the relentless environmental destruction, the seismic social upheavals, all of it ceased to be random noise. It was part of a much larger pattern, a celestial plan that was finally, inexorably, reaching its climax. For those who believed, 3I/Atlas was not some random visitor from a distant star. It was the single most significant event in the whole of human history, and they were watching it unfold, live in real time. To truly understand the genesis of this conspiracy, we must examine the ancient texts themselves, affording them the scholarly rigor they deserve. What did the Sumerians and Babylonians actually write about a planet called Nibiru? The foundational source, the cornerstone of the entire theory, is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic dating back to roughly 1200 BC. This text is not a single, unified document. It exists in multiple copies from different eras, with variations between versions that beautifully reflect the evolution of Babylonian religious thought over centuries. The most complete version we possess comes from the legendary library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh, unearthed from the city's ruins by pioneering archaeologists in the 19th century. The epic itself was likely compiled from far older oral traditions and disparate written sources, synthesizing various creation myths into a single, coherent narrative. Its primary political purpose was to justify the supremacy of the city of Babylon and its patron deity, Marduk. The epic describes the dramatic rise of the god Marduk to supreme power, achieved through his heroic defeat of the primordial chaos dragon, Tiamat. The story is unmistakably mythological in its structure, following patterns common to creation myths throughout the ancient world. Tiamat represents the formless, primordial chaos, the unformed waters that existed before creation. Marduk, in contrast, represents order, civilization, and divine kingship. The conflict between them is not a historical account of a celestial battle, but a powerful symbolic representation of the eternal struggle between chaos and order, darkness and light, the untamed wilderness and the organized city. In the narrative, Marduk establishes cosmic order by setting the stars and planets in their proper stations. And in the course of doing so, he creates Nibiru. The text states, he set up the station of Nibiru to determine their celestial bands, so that none could transgress or fall short. This single passage has been the subject of intense scholarly debate for over a century. The original Akkadian words have been analyzed by generations of Assyriologists, each bringing new linguistic tools and a deeper understanding of the language to the table. The consensus interpretation, shared by virtually every credentialed expert in cuneiform languages, is that Nibiru in this context refers to a fixed point in the celestial sphere, specifically associated with the planet Jupiter in its role as a celestial regulator. The word Nibiru itself derives from the Akkadian root neberu, meaning to cross or to ferry. It appears in various forms throughout Mesopotamian literature, always carrying connotations of a crossing, a passage, or a point of transition. In some texts, it refers to a simple ferry boat crossing a river. In others, it designates a border crossing or a frontier post. When applied to astronomy, it consistently refers to a celestial crossing point, a location where something transitions from one state or region to another. Mainstream Assyriologists interpret Nibiru in the Enuma Elish as referring to the planet Jupiter, Marduk's celestial counterpart. This identification is neither arbitrary nor speculative. It is supported by multiple, converging lines of evidence. First, Jupiter was unambiguously associated with Marduk throughout Babylonian astronomical texts. Second, as the largest and brightest of the planets visible to ancient astronomers, Jupiter was a fitting celestial manifestation of the king of the gods. Third, Jupiter's motion through the zodiac would cause it to cross the celestial equator, the projection of Earth's equator onto the sky, making it quite literally a crossing point between the northern and southern celestial hemispheres. The station of Nibiru referred to a specific point in the sky, likely related to this crossing of the celestial equator or the ecliptic. When Jupiter reached this line, it was said to be at the station of Nibiru, the place of transition. This astronomical interpretation makes perfect sense within the framework of Babylonian cosmology and observational astronomy. Other Babylonian astronomical texts, such as the asterisk Mul. Appan asterisk, a comprehensive star catalog dated to around 1000 BC, reinforced this view. In it, Nibiru appears in contexts that strongly suggest it referred to Jupiter or a specific celestial location associated with Jupiter's motion, describing phenomena that align perfectly with the planet crossing the celestial equator. However, the texts are not entirely consistent, which is unsurprising given that they span many centuries and multiple scribal traditions. Some passages describe Nibiru as the star of Marduk. Others refer to it as a planet, and still others use it as a term for specific celestial events. This variability likely reflects the natural evolution of astronomical terminology over time and the fact that ancient astronomers, like many cultures, used multiple names for the same objects depending on the context. It is precisely this ambiguity in ancient texts that has allowed alternative interpretations to gain traction among non-specialists. Zechariah Sitchin argued that the ancient Babylonians used different names for the same planet depending on its position, and that Nibiru specifically referred to the mysterious 12th planet when it was at perihelion, crossing through the inner solar system. He pointed to cylinder seals and other artifacts showing celestial symbols, claiming they were literal star maps depicting all 12 members of our solar system. But professional Assyriologists have uniformly and decisively rejected these interpretations. They argue that Sitchin lacked formal training in cuneiform languages, relied on outdated or incorrect translations, and systematically cherry-picked passages that seemed to support his thesis while ignoring the vast body of evidence that contradicted it. The famous cylinder seal Sitchin claimed showed the solar system, known as VA243, has been thoroughly analyzed by experts. They conclude it simply depicts a common presentation scene with standard religious symbols. The celestial bodies shown are the sun, the moon, and several prominent stars, not a planetary system. Nevertheless, the myth persists. It persists because myths, once planted in the collective consciousness, are extraordinarily difficult to eradicate. They take root in the fertile soil of human imagination and grow with a life of their own, defying all attempts to uproot them with mere facts. This forces us to ask a more profound question. Why are these conspiracy theories so appealing? Why do millions of people around the world choose to believe in ancient astronauts and returning gods, despite the overwhelming evidence to the contrary? The answer lies at the intersection of psychology, culture, and the fundamental human need for meaning. Psychologists who have studied conspiracy belief for decades have identified certain patterns that emerge with remarkable consistency. First, there is the appeal of hidden knowledge. Conspiracy theories offer the seductive promise that you, the believer, are part of an elite group who can see through the lies that deceive everyone else. This provides a powerful sense of superiority and specialness, a feeling that you possess a secret knowledge that makes you fundamentally different from the unthinking masses. Psychologists call this the need for uniqueness, the feeling of having access to insider information that separates you from the sheep who blindly accept what they're told. In a world where most people feel powerless and insignificant, where individual agency seems crushed beneath vast, impersonal forces, economic systems, government bureaucracies, corporate power structures, this is a potent psychological reward. The believer can say, I know what they don't know. I see what they can't see. I am awake while they sleep. This feeling compensates for a lack of control in other areas of life. If you cannot control your job, your finances, or your health, you can at least control your understanding of reality. You can construct a worldview where you are the hero, the enlightened one, the truth seeker standing against a tide of ignorance. Research has repeatedly shown that people experiencing feelings of powerlessness are more likely to endorse conspiracy theories as a way of reasserting cognitive control over their environment. Second, there is the appeal of grand narratives. Modern life can feel chaotic and fragmented. The 24-hour news cycle bombards us with disconnected events that often seem random and meaningless. Conspiracy theories provide a unifying framework, a story that connects all the disparate dots into a coherent whole. They transform random chaos into purposeful design. In doing so, they make the world feel more comprehensible, more manageable, and ultimately less terrifying. Third, there is the appeal of ancient wisdom. Our modern technological civilization, for all its achievements, has arguably lost something that ancient cultures possessed. A palpable sense of connection to the cosmos, a feeling of participating in sacred mysteries. The ancient astronaut theory paradoxically restores this sense of cosmic connection while maintaining a technological framework. The gods were aliens, yes, but they were still gods, beings of immense power who shaped human destiny. This allows believers to embrace a sacred narrative while still feeling intellectually sophisticated and scientifically minded. Fourth, there is the powerful appeal of apocalyptic thinking. The idea that we are living in the end times, that a great transformation is coming, that everything we know is about to change. This narrative has been a potent force in human culture for thousands of years. It satisfies a deep psychological need to believe that we, the people alive right now, are living through the most important moment in all of history. The return of the Anunnaki is simply the latest iteration of this eternal apocalyptic myth, a high-tech retelling of Revelation and Judgment Day. Fifth, there is the appeal of distrust in authority. The 20th and 21st centuries have provided ample, legitimate reasons for this distrust. Governments lie. Corporations deceive. The powerful manipulate information for their own benefit. This well-earned skepticism creates a receptive environment for conspiracy theories. If they lied about weapons of mass destruction, if they covered up corporate pollution, if they manipulated financial markets, then why wouldn't they hide the truth about alien contact? Once trust in institutions is broken, everything becomes suspect, and conspiracy theories rush in to fill the vacuum. But perhaps the deepest appeal of the Anunnaki theory is existential. The idea that humanity was created by advanced aliens, that we were designed for a specific purpose, even if that purpose was servitude, provides an answer to the question that has haunted philosophers and theologians for millennia. Asterisk, why are we here? Asterisk, the scientific answer, that we are the product of random evolutionary processes, emerging from mindless natural selection operating over billions of years, is profoundly unsatisfying to many people. It can make us feel like cosmic accidents, self-organizing matter with no inherent purpose or meaning. The Anunnaki theory, however, restores purpose. We were created deliberately. We have a role to play in a cosmic drama. Our lives matter because we are part of a plan that spans the stars. As 3I/Atlas continues its journey outward from the sun, as it fades from our view and disappears back into the interstellar dark from which it came, we are left with profound questions. Not questions about conspiracies or ancient astronauts, but fundamental questions about the nature of our existence and our place in the universe. The scientific facts about 3I/Atlas are clear. It is a natural object, a comet born in another stellar system approximately 4.6 billion years ago. It was likely ejected from its parent system by gravitational interactions with giant planets, cast into the interstellar void to wander the galaxy for eons. By pure chance, its path intersected with our solar system. It will complete its brief visit, swing around our sun, and return to the dark, never to be seen by human eyes again. There are no Anunnaki. There is no Nibiru. There is no ancient prophecy being fulfilled. And yet, the true story of 3I/Atlas is no less extraordinary for being natural. Consider for a moment what this object represents. It is a piece of another world, a fragment of a planetary system that was forming at the very same time our own solar system was coalescing from a disk of dust and gas. For 4 billion years, this object has been a silent witness to the evolution of the galaxy. It has passed uncounted stars, drifted through molecular clouds where new stars are being born, felt the gravitational tug of distant black holes and the radiation pressure from supernova explosions. And after all that time, it has come to visit us. For a few fleeting months, it shared our sky. It was visible to our telescopes, measurable by our instruments. We have learned from it, extracting information encoded in its chemical composition, data about the conditions in which it formed, clues about the nature of its parent system. We have proven that interstellar objects pass through our solar system regularly, that we are not isolated, that the galaxy is filled with wanderers like 3I/Atlas. We have proven that, with the right technology, we can study them, learn from them, and perhaps one day even intercept them. The discovery of 3 interstellar objects in less than a decade has revolutionized our understanding of planetary system formation. We now know that the process of ejecting small bodies is a natural, even common part of planetary system development. As giant planets form and migrate, they scatter countless smaller objects into the interstellar deep. These wanderers carry with them the chemical fingerprints of their birth systems. By studying them, we can learn about planets around other stars without ever leaving home. This is the truly profound meaning of 3I/Atlas. It is not a vehicle carrying ancient gods returning to judge us, but a message from another world. A cosmic email sent billions of years ago by the laws of physics, finally delivered to our inbox. And when we read that message, when we decode the information in its spectrum and its orbit, we learn something fundamental about the universe we inhabit. We learn that planetary systems are messy, dynamic places. We learn that the galaxy is teeming with these travelers, trillions upon trillions of them drifting through the dark, occasionally sharing material and information across the vast emptiness of space. We learn that the boundaries of our solar system are porous, connecting us to a larger galactic ecosystem. We learn that to study exoplanets, we don't necessarily need to build starships. We can wait for pieces of those worlds to come to us. This is the vision of the future that 3I/Atlas offers. Not a vision of ancient gods and prophetic doom, but a vision of scientific exploration and cosmic connection. As our telescopes improve, we will detect more and more of these interstellar objects. The Vera C. Rubin Observatory, set to come online soon, is expected to detect approximately 1 interstellar object every single year. We will build a catalog of these visitors, measuring their compositions, tracking their orbits, and learning their stories. And eventually, we will do more than just observe. We will intercept. Multiple mission concepts have already been proposed to send spacecraft to rendezvous with interstellar objects as they pass through our solar system. These missions are technically daunting. The closing velocities are enormous, requiring advanced propulsion and pinpoint precise trajectory planning, but they are possible. And when we finally send a probe to land on an interstellar object, when we return samples from another stellar system to Earth, when we hold in our hands material that formed around another star, that will be the moment the search for the Anunnaki truly comes to an end. Because we will have become the Anunnaki ourselves. We will be the beings who travel between the stars, who collect materials from distant worlds, who study the building blocks of planets in other systems. The mythology will have come full circle, and we will finally understand that the gods we were searching for were never coming from outside. They were always us, our future selves, reaching back through time to show us what we could become. The story of 3I/Atlas is ultimately a story about perspective. To the conspiracy theorist, it is a harbinger of apocalypse or salvation, the return of ancient masters. To the scientist, it is a natural phenomenon, an icy rock providing invaluable data. But perhaps there is a third perspective, one that transcends both. Perhaps 3I/Atlas is a mirror, reflecting our own deepest hopes and fears, our desperate need for meaning, our terror of insignificance, and our longing for transcendence. The human species stands at a unique crossroads in its history. We have the technology to detect visitors from other star systems, to send probes to every planet in our own, and to peer into the deepest corners of the universe. We have decoded the human genome, split the atom, and created artificial intelligence. We are on the verge of becoming an interplanetary species. And yet, we remain profoundly uncertain about our place in the cosmos. Are we alone? Is intelligence a common cosmic phenomenon? Or are we a statistical fluke that will never be repeated? Will we survive long enough to spread through the galaxy? Or will we destroy ourselves before we even leave the cradle of Earth? These are the questions that haunt us. Conspiracy theories about ancient astronauts are, in a sense, an attempt to answer them, an attempt to say, no, we are not alone. We were never alone, and our destiny is tied to forces larger than ourselves. The appeal of this narrative is understandable, but it is one we must resist. Not because it is too strange, but because it sells humanity short. The ancient astronaut theory robs us of our greatest achievements. It looks at the pyramids, the ziggurats, the breathtaking mathematical insights of ancient cultures, and it says, humans could not have done this on their own. They needed help from the stars. But this is a profound falsehood. Human beings built those monuments. Human beings developed agriculture, writing, and mathematics. Human beings decoded the motions of the planets and discovered fire. We did this not because aliens taught us, but because we are the descendants of relentless ancestors who refused to give up, who looked at a hostile world and resolved to understand it, to master it, and to reshape it according to their will. The story of humanity is not a story of servitude to cosmic masters. It is a story of liberation from ignorance, of triumph over adversity, of boundless imagination and endless innovation. We are not genetically engineered slaves mining gold for alien overlords. We are the universe becoming conscious of itself. When we look at 3I/Atlas, we should not see the return of gods. We should see a reflection of what we ourselves will one day become. A species that travels between the stars, a civilization that spreads through the galaxy, a lineage that carries the fragile light of consciousness to distant worlds. This is our destiny. Not because it was given to us, but because we will create it ourselves, step by step, generation by generation, reaching ever outward into the infinite dark. And so, as 3I/Atlas fades from our telescopes, we bid it farewell. We thank it for its brief visit, for the data it provided, and for the questions it raised. We acknowledge it as a fellow traveler through the cosmos, a piece of another world that stopped by to say hello. And we promise that the next time an interstellar visitor arrives, we will be ready. We will send our machines to greet it. We will study it up close. And perhaps, in the distant future, we will capture one, bringing a fragment of another star system into orbit around our own world, a permanent testament to our curiosity. We will build museums where future generations can see and touch material from another star. This is the true legacy of 3I/Atlas. Not ancient prophecy fulfilled, but human curiosity ignited. Not the return of gods, but the beginning of our own journey to the stars. The shadow this comet casts is not one of doom, but one of infinite possibility. As you sit in the quiet dark, contemplating what you have learned, know this: the universe is vast beyond all comprehension. There are more stars in the observable universe than grains of sand on all the beaches of Earth. Around those stars orbit trillions of planets. And on some of them, there may indeed be life. There may be intelligence and civilizations far older than our own. But if such beings exist, they did not create us. The story of humanity is our own. It was written by our ancestors in blood and sweat and tears. It is etched into the ruins of ancient cities and the DNA sequences that define us. It is traced in the footprints on the moon and the rover tracks on Mars. We are not the property of cosmic masters. We are not slaves awaiting the return of our creators. We are free beings, the product of evolution and chance, rising from the dust of dead stars to ask questions about our origins and our destiny. And that truth is more extraordinary, more profound, and more beautiful than any conspiracy theory could ever be. 3I/Atlas has come and gone. The Anunnaki did not return. The world did not end. And yet, something remarkable happened. For a few brief months, humanity studied a visitor from another star. We learned from it. We grew. And in doing so, we took another small but significant step in our transformation into a spacefaring species. The next interstellar object is already on its way. Somewhere in the vast, silent dark between the stars, another ancient wanderer is already making its approach toward our solar system. When it finally arrives, perhaps in a year, perhaps in a decade, we will be ready. We will be watching. We will diligently track its trajectory, meticulously analyze its composition, and perhaps even send our own robotic emissaries to meet it. And with each such encounter, we will unravel more of the secrets of the universe that gave birth to us. The truth of 3I/Atlas isn't concealed in ancient prophecies or clandestine government cover-ups. It is written in the light of its spectrum, etched into the mathematics of its orbit, and bound by the fundamental laws of physics that govern its journey. And that truth, while perhaps less theatrical than tales of returning deities, is infinitely more beautiful precisely because it is real. The mystery remains. Not the contrived mystery of Nibiru or the Anunnaki, but the authentic, awe-inspiring mystery of existence itself. Why is there something rather than nothing? How did our universe give rise to the complexities of life and consciousness? Are we alone in pondering these grand questions? Or are there others, looking up at their own skies, wondering if they, too, are the only ones? These profound mysteries will not be solved by reinterpreting ancient texts or searching for hidden meanings in the tangled webs of conspiracy theories. They will be solved through the rigorous application of science, by telescopes and spacecraft, by patient observation and meticulous experimentation, by the elegant language of mathematics and the unwavering discipline of skepticism. They will be solved by us, standing on the shoulders of all who came before, reaching just a little higher, and seeing just a little bit farther into the cosmos. And so, we return to where we began. The silent, sprawling darkness between the stars. A void so vast that light itself seems to grow weary on its journey across it. But now you understand that this darkness is not empty. It is teeming with wanderers like 3I/Atlas, fragments of distant worlds, carrying silent messages across the cosmic ocean. They have been traveling for eons, and they will continue to travel for eons more. Some will pass through our solar system, others will miss us by light years. But all of them are part of the same grand narrative. the story of matter and energy evolving into ever more intricate forms. The saga of planets, stars, and galaxies engaged in a celestial dance across the fabric of spacetime. It is the story of the universe itself, slowly, gradually, awakening to its own existence. And we are an integral part of that story, not as subjugated slaves of ancient astronauts, but as free agents, conscious beings with the capacity to comprehend our own origins and the power to shape our own destiny. The shadow of 3I/Atlas has passed, but the light it helped to reveal remains. It is the light of scientific understanding, the light of insatiable human curiosity, the light of our unending quest to know ourselves and our cosmos. That light will be our guide as we continue our journey through the endless dark, reaching for the stars. Not because we were commanded to by ancient gods, but because it is our nature to reach, to explore, to understand, to grow. This is who we are. It is what we have always been. And it is what we are destined to become. The real story of 3I/Atlas isn't about the Anunnaki. It is about us. It is about that moment when we looked up at a visitor from another star system and saw not the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, but a glimpse of the future that awaits us. A future among the stars. A future we will build for ourselves. Step by step, generation by generation, until one day, our own descendants will journey between the stars as effortlessly as 3I/Atlas has done. And when they pass through alien solar systems, perhaps there will be beings on those distant worlds who will look up and wonder if they, too, are being visited by gods. But our descendants will not be gods. They will be human, the proud inheritors of a legacy stretching back 4 billion years, to the very first molecules that learned to replicate in the primordial oceans of Earth. They will carry with them the hopes and dreams of every human who ever lived, every ancestor who struggled and survived to pass their genes forward to the next generation. And they will know that they achieved this not because ancient astronauts gifted them technology, but because their ancestors refused to stop questioning, refused to stop exploring, and refused to accept that the Earth was all there was. The arrival and departure of 3I/Atlas will be remembered not as the return of gods, but as one more step in humanity's long journey toward understanding our place in the cosmos. One more data point in our quest to answer the fundamental questions. One more reason to look up at the night sky with a heart full of wonder and a mind driven by curiosity. The universe is vast, ancient, and filled with mysteries. But those mysteries are not supernatural. They are natural and they are waiting for us to solve them. If you've journeyed with us this far and enjoyed the video, a gentle click on the like button and a subscription to the channel would be a wonderful way to support our work. We deeply appreciate your support. If you have any feedback on how we can improve or do better, please share your thoughts in the comments below. For more deep dives like this one, please be sure to check out our other videos as well.